All right, guys. So welcome to the second part of the Alchemical Cabala's review of Alice in Underland. So we're going to just briefly review the movie as told by Tim Burton through the lens of the tarot and the Tree of Life. Now, there are a few pictures for reference that you will need to know to be able to process all the images in the movie with the Tree of Life. Most of you here are deeply familiar with these things, but some people that may be just watching this now may not be. So these are things, no matter where you are in tarot and Kabbalah, that you should be familiar with, that will help you tremendously. Okay, becoming familiar with the spheres on the tree and the paths that connect them, and then comparing that with the movie. You can do this with any movie. This is just one just lends itself quite well to it because it's dealing with the subconscious. All right. So the first image that you should be familiar with in Kabbalah, which we've gone over, I think, on our first class a couple years ago, is this one. This is what I call the simple tree. And it's the only place I know it occurs is in the Book of Tokens by Paul Case. It's at the very back. I've never seen it duplicated anywhere else. And so this tree should be memorized because then you can take this tree and compare it with virtually any tree of life, no matter how complex it is, and make it more accessible to the modern Western mind. Okay? Then you can compare that with virtually, again, any tree of life. Um, Here's the tree with the paths on. You should also be familiar with this. Okay. Now, back to the simple tree. So look, you'll see on there, there's lines across it, and these are the seven planes. Okay, this is very classical Hermeticism and Kabbalah in the Western tradition. And you see the 10 spheres or Sephiroth, and in the middle, understand that it's called the egoic plane at Tiferet. This is the sphere of beauty. And that's kind of an old-fashioned term in today's, the way most people think of ego in today's terms. We're not talking about the same thing. We're just talking about I here. On the tree, it's understood that when a being is incarnate, the four bottom spheres are expressions of the personality of the I. Okay? So when one incarnates from Tiferet, there that the center, then the next manifestation is consciousness that is identified with its feelings. That's the seventh sphere, right? And then its thoughts. That's sphere 8. Then its inner imaginings and dreams, which is sphere 9. And then, of course, the outer sense perceptions of what we call the world is sphere 10. The higher self comprises the top 6 spheres and the lower 4, the whole 10. This is all one, but is generally seated within the heart of the tree. The heart of the tree is that which connects the above to the below, and it's where we come into contact with our true higher self. When we are incarnate in the world, consciousness, awareness is typically focused on the cares of the world and the things of the feelings and the thoughts and the dreams and the images. So the tree itself is a map, right, for our inner consciousness. It helps us to locate where we are in quote creation. where we are conscious in creation. This becomes a huge deal when we start working on the inner planes themselves. Usually, first steps are like lucid dreams. And the whole spiritual path, in a nutshell, can be expressed as simply one of remembering one's self, one's true I, the identity that one was before this life, the one that one is behind all appearances now, and the one that one will be. This is this re-identification of who one actually is. And this implies that there is a truth to oneself that is eternal. And this self can be remembered and realized. This is sometimes called spiritual awakening. And our work spiritually is to bring as much of our true self into the expression of this space we call Malkut, or the world. So memorizing the simple tree is helpful because, again, the tree of life is a master map of consciousness, a series of archetypal images and energies that are living currents that form the universe from the within to the without. The Master Jesus said, "The kingdom of heaven is within you." On the tree, the kingdom is the lowest sphere on the tree that we see as the outward reflection or manifest aspect of reality. We might consider Malkut the outer fruit that drops from the inner tree. So, to approach what we call the above, consciousness must first be directed within. The next sphere up on the tree of life is Yesod, the moon sphere. And it's where our subconscious imagery manifests to our own awareness as dreams. Another title for Yesod is the storehouse of images. The higher one ascends the tree of life, the deeper one's consciousness is operating on the inner planes. The Sephiroth, or the spheres, are differentiations, pronouncing that right, differentiations. So they're variations, right, of the one light, very much like a rainbow, are different vibratory levels, but they're specific. We register red as red, and it's this vibratory level that is red. And when we're able to raise that vibration, we come into a different vibratory level of the one light, the yellow sphere, right? This is very similar to the planes on the tree of life within us now. There's only one reality. And these spheres are not separate, but they are all within. So yes, there's a simple tree. So do memorize this image and do memorize where the tarot keys fall and how they connect the different spheres on the tree. If you've not done this, this is the basics that you'll need to have memorized to work more deeply with the tree. All right, now to our story. So, Alice in Wonderland is a story that uses the universal imagery of the subconscious to convey the path of individuation or spiritual waking. the remembering of the real self. The story opens with Alice's father being told he's finally lost his senses and that his proposed venture is simply impossible. So, this suggests that to travel to Underland or the world within requires us letting go of identifying with the reality presented to the outer senses as all that there is or all that is knowable, particularly that which is held as common belief in the mass mind. So Alice's father replies to the statement that he's lost his senses. He says the only way to achieve the impossible is to believe it is possible. Now, this is an excellent practice, and it really should be practiced every day. Just wonder about what seems impossible and muse on how that it might be possible. So Alice interrupts this meeting and tells her father she has concerns about these recurring dreams she has. She's falling down this dark hole. And he goes to her and very kindly sits at her bedside as she's talking about falling down this dark hole. So in the tarot, the fool is about to step off into an abyss of the unknown. Alice is concerned that she may be mad, and her father comforts her and tells her he's afraid she's right. She's gone bonkers. She's gone mad. And then he says, but I'll tell you a secret. All the best people are. So on the tree, the fool connects the crown of Keter, which is the divine self, on the simple tree, to the sphere of wisdom, which is the divine life on the simple tree. It's the first path. So often quoted here in Cabala is the statement of St. Paul, where he says, the wisdom of God is foolishness to men, and to be wise become a fool. Alice's father also comforts her by telling her that if she gets too scared, she can wake herself up. And if you watch the scene, he pinches her on her left shoulder. And we know we back into the tree. So the left shoulder is the sphere of memory. This is another reason to memorize this. So the locations of the Sephiroth in the inner bodies of the inner person, the tree is situated so that the spheres are in general locations along the inner bodies. And one practice we do as Kabbalists is we start to visualize the tree in our auric fields. And as we do this, it builds up our connections to these aspects of the divine. And we're able to connect in our being in the microcosm to these realities in the macrocosm. So you see here on the left side, since we back into the tree, we have spheres 2, 4, and 7. And remember, he pinched his daughter on the left shoulder there at 4, which is mercy and memory. And this pillar is called the pillar of mercy. And then on the right side of the figure of our nature, in Cabala, the tree, we have the pillar of severity, which are spheres 3, 5, and 8. Since we back into the tree, the pillars along the spinal column are what are called the middle pillar. Okay, and we see the crown, the throat area of Da'at, the heart in the center of the chest, Yesod down here in the lower region, and then at our feet, Malkut. So, for the sake of this work and the Western mystery tradition, it's highly recommended that the serious student and practitioner memorize these things: where the spheres are, the simple tree, and how to imagine them. Okay. So the story proceeds 13 years later, and Alice is 13 years older, and she's at a major crossroads in her life. She's being driven by her mother because her father has passed on in the story. And so she's brought to like the big question on what she's going to do with her life. She's very much like her father. She's a dreamer, and she's reluctant to conform to what the world thinks she should do. She questions everything, is easily distracted by her imaginings. So her mother's taking her to this big event, and she tells her mother she's still having these recurring dreams over and over. And her mother comforts her by taking off her necklace and putting it around Alice's neck. As she does this, she tells her she's beautiful. And you see this pendant that her mother gives her, and it lays right over her heart. We know in Cabala, the heart center is beauty. So that's a nice touch. So Alice is going, and the first scene she's coming to is she's arrives at a dance, and there's a man that's been courting her there, and they're dancing, and she starts imagining. She's like, I'm imagining women in pants and men in dresses, and she's laughing, and what we see there is a reversal of the polarities. And then she says, I wonder what it would be like to fly. And the courter is named Hamish, and he's like, why would you waste your time worrying about such an impossible thing? So Alice says, why wouldn't I? My father says he sometimes believed in six impossible things before breakfast. So then Alice is taken by Hamish's mother through her garden. She gets very upset because she sees all these white roses. And she said, I told these imbeciles to plant red roses. So the white rose in the tarot, as you all know, is first seen in the Fool Cube, and it's the pure desire of the self. The red roses are the desire nature of our incarnate animal nature. Nothing wrong with it. It's just, it's a different expression of desire. It's not pure, undifferentiated desire. So it's here in this garden of white roses that Alice first notices the white rabbit, who's increasingly getting her attention. And she goes to the gazebo, and Hamish bends down on one knee, and he's about to propose to her. As he's starting to, a blue caterpillar crawls up on his right shoulder, and he's about to swat at it, like severity. That's this at the right shoulder is the red sphere. But Alice stops him, and she mercifully takes the caterpillar and she sets it to the side. And then Hamish proposes, and Alice doesn't know what to do. So you see her pause and kind of turn within and reflect. And she says, I need a moment. It's right here. She sees the white rabbit, and he's holding up this clock, and he's looking at her, right? And he's like, only Alice is seeing this. So when it's time for the self to awaken, all forces move towards this event. So the rabbit guides Alice to the base of an old spiraled tree trunk, and it still has its roots, which are very deep. In the movie, it looks like this. Now notice the height of the tree here. It's a little bit above her head, just a little. And she's drawn to this opening at the base of the trunk of the tree. She leans down, looking within into the entrance of this very old tree trunk, and she starts looking inward. So, on the tree of life, the first path that leads from the outer world to the within is the world key. It connects the 10th sphere, which is the kingdom, to Yesod. And this key shows what is a hermaphrodite. It's a union of the polarities of the male and the female, or our self-conscious and our subconscious mind, and these energies. This key in Cabala and Tarot is known as the world dancer. Now, recall Alice just left a dance where she was imagining the women dressed as men and the men dressed as women. Here's where the world key occurs on the tree of life. So, what this tells us is the first path of initiation back into the tree of life is the path of Tal, the cross, and the world dancer. It connects the outer world of form to the inner dream world of Yesod, right here, the moon. This sphere of Yesod is the astral plane. Sometimes this is called the underworld in the Western tradition. Modern psychology calls this the subconscious mind. And in Kabbalah, again, it's the sphere of the moon, the foundation. So again, Alice comes to the base of the tree. She falls through, like the fool, falls through the storehouse of images, which is a Kabbalistic term for Yesod. And you see all these images as she's falling through this portal. And she lands on a ceiling where everything is reversed. She reorients herself in this space. And I will say something a really great teacher once said that for us to see the truth, we turn everything upside down and backwards. So she does this. She reorients herself upside down and backwards, and she finds she's in this space, a totally different space she's used to. And she sees all these places, but she can't really access where she's trying to go. But she sees these things. There's a drink on a table, and then there is this little cake, and it says "Drink me," and it says "Eat me." Now, in the story, she gets smaller and then she gets larger, and we know this. So, one interpretation here is that the drink and the cake is a reference to the sacraments of taking food and drink. And what the sacraments do is they allow the consciousness and the soul and the being to adjust to this new environment that they now find themselves in. And as we ascend the tree, we're going into higher vibratory levels of reality, of the one. So she finds herself in this little black and white checkered room, and she's able to get herself to the right dimension now and oriented where she's able to go through this small portal, this small doorway. As she enters this, she enters officially into the moon sphere of Yesod, the dream world, the astral plane, with her self-consciousness intact. She is lucid dreaming. And that's the difference between this and just a dream. She is aware she's dreaming. Now, it's interesting, as soon as she enters Yesod in the movie, we see the same tree she fell through right before her. But the difference is This tree has now grown twice its size in length, but it's still not fully formed. But here she is descending down the steps. As she descends, she's ascending on the tree. So it's here in Underland that she meets these wonderful creatures. They all recognize her, or they think they do, from before, but they're not sure. So they decide to take her to see Absalom. She asks Tweedledee and Tweedledum, which are the twins of polarity, and they escort her to see Absalom. She asks, "Who is Absalom?" And they tell her he's wise, he's absolute. So they take her to Absalom, and we see this blue caterpillar obscured by smoke. And she walks right up to him, and all he says, the first thing out of his mouth is, "Who are you?" And that's the question, right? That is the question for all of us. That's the question that every single one of us must answer on the path of return and self remembrance. She replies, "Alice," to which he replies, "We shall see." So Absalom then instructs the crew there that are brought her to unroll the oraculum. The oraculum referencing the word oracle. And this is a scroll that contains all the events of Underland as seen by the wise. So now, anyone, where in the Book of Wisdom do we see the scroll?
The High
The high
Priestess.
priestess. Perfect. Thank you, Easy. Yes, the high priestess. Exactly. So the scroll, as seen in the lap of the high priestess, connects the divine self, the real self, right, to the heart of the tree. And one way of looking at the actual scroll is this is the book of life. It's the sacred book that contains all that was, all that is, and all that will be. It's imprinted into this, what is called the Akasha. In the Western tradition, it's called the Akashic records of timelessness. And everything is imprinted and makes an impression in this etheric substance, this first matter. And because of that, everything is held in perfect memory by the creator and sustainer of the universe. So in Cabala, the teaching is that creation continues because the universe never forgets any aspect about itself. It's because of this that we are able to remember who we are. Now, note the blue color in the high priestess is the blue sphere of memory and water on the tree of life. Also, note that on her crown, she wears the moon, the sphere in which Alice is now conscious. She also has the pillars of duality behind her, but they're in perfect equilibrium as creation flows forth from her robes. She is the primal matter, the substance of which all forms that appear or have appeared or ever will appear are made of. So they unroll the oraculum, the scroll, and it's such a great scene because it shows her pointing to a scroll on the scroll, shows her exactly where she is at that exact moment. And then Absalom says, "Okay, now show her where she slays the Jabberwocky." So they move the scroll along and they show her slaying this fierce creature, the Jabberwocky, on Frabjous Day. And he says specifically with the Vorpal sword. So Alice looks at this image and she seriously doubts that that's her. And the rabbit then asks Absalom if they have the right Alice, and he just replies, not hardly. So Alice recalls at this moment she's in a dream. She tries to wake up. But if you pay attention, she pinches herself on the right shoulder, not the left where her father pinched her. And she's not able to wake up, and it really surprises her, even though she's conscious. At this time, this mouse tries to help her wake up by sticking her in her left foot. And as soon as she does this, Alice is confronted and realizes there are very powerful forces in this new world she finds herself that must be dealt with. So Alice is now confronted by this powerful beast. In this story, the beast is called the Bandersnatch, and it's unleashed by the Red Queen and her army. Red on the Tree of Life, again, is the sphere of severity, force, power, and the Mars sphere at the right shoulder. An older term for this sphere in Kabbalah is called Pashad, and that means fear, like terror. Note, there's a statement in Ecclesiastes that says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. So Alice's first instinct here is to run and just get out, right? Which in the sphere of Yesod, the moon sphere, is the automatic consciousness. It contains all the instinctual habits of our animal nature. And it's very, very, very old evolution. It takes great courage to face these aspects within us, because we're not just facing them just in us, we're dealing with much deeper, long-standing powers. But she musters up courage, and she turns around and she faces this beast. And she remembers her father telling her nothing can hurt her, it's just a dream. When she turns around and expresses courage, the beast stops right in front of her. He's just breathing heavily on her. As he does this, the little mouse jumps up and takes her needle sword and plucks the beast's right eye out. As the mouse does this, the beast takes his claws and scratches Alice and wounds her at her right shoulder, which is Gevra, Mars. So, on the Tree of Life, the path of strength is the middle horizontal path that connects mercy and severity. The sphere where you see the pink rose and the alchemical Cabala tree is typically red. This is the red sphere of Mars. So you see the 5 sides on it, the pentagon. So the strength key balances these two aspects of reality, severity and love. And again, it's the middle horizontal path. And on the simple tree, this is the higher mental plane. So this suggests to deal with these lower animal forces, to tame them, we have to be able to tap into the higher mental plane within us, which we all have the ability to do, but we must be able to concentrate and stay lucid to do this. So in Kabbalah, the strength key is the Kundalini. It's the subtle serpent force that is typically said to reside slumbering at the base of the spine and the pelvis in what's called the sacrum. Now, if we look at the strength key again, we see, look where the tail of the lion comes up to, about where the sacrum would be on the beautiful woman standing upright. It's raised up to here and maybe higher because we see these roses come trending up and growing and starting to sprout on her head. So, it should be said regarding Kundalini, this is a very powerful force, and it's discouraged to try to awaken this by quote force. More often than not, that's not safe. So we definitely want to have experienced teachers assist us with this, but the tarot assists us to do this safely. The thing is, the manner in which this power is awakened is very important because it can be destructive and integrating. At this point in the story of Alice in Wonderland, this beast she's confronting is under the control and direction of the Red Queen, who is controlling everything through fear. So the expression of this force is likely to be destructive at this point. The Red Queen, throughout the story, ponders a couple of times whether it's better to be loved or feared. So Alice escapes this beast and the Queen's minor arcana, which are forces. And a dark night comes and steals the oraculum. A bird takes the twins off, and they all get taken away to the Red Queen's castle. Again, the Red Queen controls everything through fear, which is indicative of a personality that is imbalanced. Too much Gevra on the Tree of Life, too much Mars force, which becomes cruel when it's not tempered by mercy. So she has anyone that disobeys her desires decapitated. It's interesting that she appears as the character of the Queen of Hearts, but she has this giant head that she's very, very proud of. And she's cutting off everyone else's head who disagrees with it. So in the story, the knight that attends to her is also missing an eye. And so he shows her that he's found the oraculum and shows her that Alice is going to slay the Jabberwocky. And she kind of, freaks out on all that. And now in the story, Alice isn't sure where she's going to go. And at this point, we have a different character show up. Here enters the Cheshire Cat. Now, he introduces himself, or he materializes, I should say, to Alice from the ethers. And he just kind of just appears out of thin air on a branch in a darkened wood. And he has this big grin, and you'll notice it's in the shape of a crescent. He tells Alice he sees her wound and he wants to heal it. He says it needs to be purified by someone with, quote, evaporating skills. That's an interesting term. So, again, her wound's at the right shoulder, and this is the area of fire, Gevra. The Cheshire Cat, being a cat, is an element of fire, but he also has this crescent, which is a quality of the moon and water. In fact, it is the identical tattva of water in the Western tradition. Now, this is worth noting and pondering because all of these things are living realities or pointing to living realities. Here's another expression of the Cheshire Cat, and this is worth pondering because the cat is very helpful in the story and very healing. So let's look at a couple other images. Um, regards to the crescent. So here's an image of the spine and the sacrum and the coccyx. Okay, here's another image showing the pelvic area Where did you go? Let's see. Here it is. Okay. So here's the base of the spine, and the pelvis, right? We see the crescent shape. We see the sacrum here and the coccyx. Now look at the shape of the coccyx. Again, remember, the Kundalini, the spiraled force, power, is said to reside here coiled, in a coiled condition, until it is transformed. Most people, this is in a state of slumber, they say. But here's an interesting image from an earlier version of Alice in Wonderland. Looking at the coccyx, you might find this interesting. Here's the caterpillar. So it's said that this Kundalini lies within the sacrum until its transformation, then it rises. So back to Cheshire. He is the helpful part of our animal nature that assists us. And he attempts to purify the wound by applying this watery nature to the fiery wound of Gebera. He's trying to temper it, to bring it into balance. So on the tree, the direct middle path out of Yesod that connects the sun to the moon is the path of temperance. And this is the higher self. And we see it here balancing the fire and the water, pouring water on the fire and fire on the water. As it does this, it causes steam to rise. It causes the water to evaporate. And as it rises along the golden path towards the heart on the tree. Cheshire informs Alice that this wound must be healed or it will fester. And she's kind of reluctant to let him do much more with it, but she does allow him to bind it for her. He says, "At least let me bind it." She said, "Okay." So he binds this wound for her and it prevents it from spreading. Then Cheshire leads Alice to the Hatter. Now, it's a nice touch in this movie that the Hatter's hair is this splendidly bright orange color. And it refers to the sphere of splendor on the tree of hope, the intellect. The Hatter is the intellect that assists Alice on her path. He is insane or sane within, not without sanity. So he's mad that the Red Queen is wearing the crown in Underland and ruling everything through fear. And he says that, when the White Queen wears the crown again, he will futterwacken, which is a dance. And he also assists Alice by telling her that the absolute best way to travel is by hat. So what he's referencing here is talking about when we are lucid on the inner planes, one way that we operate and move from point to point is through thought. It's how we manipulate and how we interact with the greater mind. So the Hatter then recites the poem of slaying the Jabberwocky. And then he tells Alice, he's like, "This is all about you. It's all about you." And the Alice is the slayer. And she still doubts this. And then he looks at her and he points towards her heart and he's like, "You've lost something. You've lost your muchness." It's like, "You used to be much muchier." So the Queen's guards come and the Hatter surrenders himself to allow Alice to escape. So on the tree where we are at Hode, the path that connects Hode to Gevurah is the suspended man. So the suspended man connects again the intellect to action or volition. and it means suspended mind. So he throws Alice off in his hat, and she's really small, and she starts making her way towards the queen's red castle. And she gets to the moat, and there are all these giant heads, like dead heads, just floating in this moat. She's jumping from one to the other, and she's really um expressing a lot of courage. And she's like, quote, she's like, "Lost my muchness, have I?" And she comes into the castle and she sees the Red Queen for the first time. And she's watching her. She sees how cruel she is to all the animals. And all the people around her are all just flattering her and being fake. They're not being authentic. The Hatter talks about contemplating things that begin with the letter M. In the tarot, the suspended man is the letter M, means mem, means waters. And you might reference the word memory. The queen threatens to cut off the Hatter's head, but he cunningly feeds her big head by offering to pat it or to fill her big head with thoughts that flatter her. So the Red Queen refers to her sister, the White Queen. She says that the White Queen can make anyone fall in love with her. And she's this polarity to the Red Queen in the story. She represents the high priestess as well as Venus, the pillar of mercy on the other side of the tree. So the Red Queen is the pillar of severity, the White Queen is the pillar of mercy, right? And at one point, Alice asks, "Why don't you just do all this?" She's like, "I can't. It's against my vows, right? To slay the Jabberwocky." So the Red Queen's ruling everything through fear. She even has her own husband executed because she was afraid he would leave her. So she controls everything through fear. And the knight asks her again if it's better to be loved or feared. And for a brief moment in the movie, you see her express a little bit of doubt, like wonder, that question. So here the Hatter gets very distraught when he realizes he's serving the Red Queen. And Alice is there, and he's like, "Have I gone mad?" And she comforts him the way her father comforted her. She said, "Yes, I'm sorry. You're bonkers, but all the best people are." So here the Hatter directs Alice to find the Vorpal sword, which is hidden in this castle, this, this powerful Mars castle. And he instructs her to find it and take it to the White Queen. That she has to have this sword to be victorious over the Jabberwocky. Now, you might find it interesting when you read the works here of an artist like C.S. Lewis, who wrote Alice in Wonderland, when they make these exaggerated words. It's really easy now with AI to like see how many words can be made. But one of the words that easily stands out from the Vorpal sword, the word Vorpal, is that it contains the word valor. And in the tarot, going backwards, going back up the tree, the first place we see the sword is in the Wheel of Fortune key, which is the intelligence which rewards those who seek. And it balances this key, the suspended man, on the tree on the opposite side. So here's where we first see the sword. This connects victory and mercy, and it shows the self depicted here as a sphinx holding the sword. And in Hebrew, we know that the sword is the letter Zion, which means discernment. So here the self is shown holding the sword of love as the blue sphinx, sphere of mercy. It also shows the polarities of black and white are necessary for creation to occur, as they both are aspects of the one headpiece on the sphinx. The letter Kaf means grasping hand. and it's that which grasps the sword to discern the true self. The path of Zion, the sword, remember, connects understanding, the black sphere, the third sphere on the tree, to the heart. So Alice goes to find the sword. And where does she find it? She finds it hidden in the place where the Bandersnatch is, the beast that wounded her right arm. She's afraid, but she shows the beast compassion and returns its eye to him. It's by this act of mercy and love that she tames the beast, and the beast immediately licks her on the right shoulder at the place where the wound is. As she does this, as the beast does this, Alice's wound is healed. It's very interesting. It shows a connection between the two. Now, Alice is able to retrieve this key around the beast's neck. See the ring of wreath roses around the beast's neck here that unlocks the chest that contains the Vorpal sword. Again, Vorpal, we see the word valor. So the definition of valor is great courage in the face of danger, especially in battle. So we know strength connects mercy to severity. Now, she then rides this beast, the Bandersnatch, with the sword back to the White Queen's castle. So what we see here is what was once her tremendous fear has now become a great strength to her. These aren't just ideas. True strength comes from the higher vibrations of love directing the animal nature. The story of Beauty and the Beast. Again, this is the force of the Kundalini that can harm or heal depending on the character with which it is awakened. This is why the woman harnessing the beast with roses is in white, purely motivated by the divine self of Keter, the one will. So Alice returns to the White Castle, the White Queen, and she has all of her armor. And she's working to become herself. Ephesians 6:10 Paul tells us, "Be strong in the Lord and the strength of his might. Put on the whole armor of God that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. For we are not contending against flesh and blood, but against the principalities and powers, against the world rulers of the present darkness, against the spiritual host of wickedness in the heavenly places. Therefore, take the whole armor of God that you may be able to withstand the evil day. And having done all to stand, stand therefore, having girded your loins with truth, and having put on the breastplate of righteousness, having shod your feet with the equipment of the gospel of peace. Besides all these, taking the shield of faith, with which you can quench all the flaming darts of the evil one. Take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God." So the White Queen helps Alice get back to her proper size. And she talks about how her sister studied dominion over living things. And it shows the White Queen working with things that are in the underworld. So Alice returns again to Absalom here. And the first words when she approaches him is, "Who are you?" Same question. And she said, "I thought we settled this." He said, "I never said you weren't Alice." He said, "I said you were not hardly Alice." He says, "But now you're much more. In fact, you are almost Alice." And she tells Absalom that she couldn't slay the Jabberwocky even if her life depended on it. And he tells her point blank it will. He suggests that she keep the vorpal sword at hand when the Jabberwocky comes. Now, here's a point in Kabbalah in regards to evil. So, what the teaching is that evil is not real in the sense that it is eternal, but the one force that imbues all things is real. So, this one force, if it imbues dark images of ignorance or fear, it still must be dealt with. And this requires the sword of discernment. The sword of discernment is the word of God within you, the living word. So this is intimated in the first commandment. I am the Lord your God. You shall have no other gods before me. And also, Hear, O Israel, the Lord thy God is one. So the Jabberwocky is the devil or deceiver, the shadow aspect of the one self that must be dealt with. Okay. In the tarot, if you put the deceiver key next to the sword key, you see this. So the key on the left shows the subconscious in a trance state. They're not awake. The key on the right shows the same figures, all three, but in an awakened higher state. And this is the sword of discernment. This is the correct uh, relationship we should have with ourself, shown on the right. The one on the left is one of ignorance. The letter ayin means eye. It says when the whole body is filled with light, when the eye is single, the whole body will be filled with light. This refers again to the raising of this force, the serpent force, and it illumines the inner vision to see from the heart. We see the one reality behind the multitude of appearances. So there's a story in the Bible where Christ is healing this man possessed of multiple demons. And he asks the demon its name. The reply is Legion. And the response is Legion, for we are many. So Christ restored the man wholeness by seeing the one that he is. It's interesting in our $1 bill in our culture, we have the statement e pluribus unum, out of the many, one. In the deceiver key, self-consciousness is focused on object of desire, looking down. In the lover's key, self-consciousness is looking into the eyes of the soul, the Eve, the subconscious, who is looking directly at the self, shown as the angel here, Raphael, means God is healed. And the left figures, they're dreaming unconsciously. If they were awake, they would see their chains are loose enough, they can just take them right off. And they would also see that the figure that's on this is a two-dimensional form. It's just a two-dimensional image. It's not a whole cube. Okay, so the White Queen asks who will step forward to be her champion. Now, all the aspects of Alice's psyche now step forward and volunteer. I'll do it. I'll do it. I'll do it. But the oraculum, the scroll, says it has to be Alice. So Alice is distraught and she doesn't know what to do. She goes one more time to seek Absalom and she finds him and he's weaving a cocoon. So he tells her, she's crying. He's like, nothing is ever accomplished with tears. And she asks him, why is he upside down? He says, he's come to the end of this life. She asks him if he's going to die. He says, no, he's going to transform. So in the tarot, we see, of course, the cocoon of the suspended mind. And then following this suspension is the transition key. Key of transition or transformation, where we see the white rose again. We see the heads here, the self-conscious and the subconscious, and the sun appears to be rising. There's a statement, be faithful unto death, I will give you the crown of life. So Alice tells Absalom she needs his help. And he says, I can't help you if you don't even know who you are. He calls her a stupid girl. And she says, I'm not stupid. She tells Absalom who she is. She tells him that she is the daughter of her father. She is Alice Kingsley. Alice at last, exclaims Absalom. She has remembered herself as she is. She also remembers that she's been to Underland as a child, and Absalom tells her she used to call it Wonderland. And she remembers that this place is real. And then he advises her that everything there is real, and that when she faces the Jabberwocky to hold on to the sword, just hold on to it. It knows what to do. So Alice rides out on the Bandersnatch, right, in full strength and in her full armor. She's chosen to be the champion. There she is. So as she goes out, she goes into battle to face the Jabberwocky, and she remembers 6 impossible things going into battle. And she tells herself, count them, Alice. And she starts with one. She's like, there's a potion that can make you shrink. This is drink. There's a cake that can make you grow. This is bread, cake. Then the Jabberwocky says, so, my old foe, we meet again. And Alice says, we've never met. And he says, not you, insignificant bearer. He's referring to the Vorpal one, referring to valor. Alice uses the power of the word here as she exclaims, silence, and she cuts off the Jabberwocky's tongue. She continues, 3, animals can talk, the word. 4, cats can disappear. This is the ability to work invisibly, invisibly. There's a place called Wonderland or the underworld. And finally, she says, I can slay the Jabberwocky. So she believes in herself. And here, all the aspects of her psyche help her in this battle. She climbs up this spiraled old temple and the staircase in the spiral. As she does, she gets on the back of the neck of the Jabberwocky. He throws her way up into the air. And she just does what Absalom tells her and holds on to that sword. As she's falling down, she exclaims, off with your head. And as she does, the sword severs the head of the dragon. In the tarot, the sword is the key of spiritual awakening. It's the tower key. And it shows the path of the flaming sword issuing from the sun, the logos, the word. This connects Hod, splendor and thoughts, with the emotions and Natsak and victory. The Hebrew letter Pei here means mouth. And there's a saying, man shall not live by bread alone, but every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. This is where the self-antiphorate speaks forth the living word and overthrows that false identification of self. In Kabbalah, this is sometimes shown as the lightning strike through the tree. The path of the flaming sword flows first through the divine will and Keter, through every Sephiroth, all the way to Malkut. So now Alice is awakened. She's able to wake from Underland and return to the kingdom, the outer world, knowing who she is. From this knowing, she tells everyone in her life what her true will is, and then she proceeds to follow it. Now she chooses to follow her father's vision and even expands it and sets sail on high seas to start a new quest. As she goes along her quest, she sees that Absalom has risen from Underland and is now transformed into a being with wings. Thank you all for your participation. This concludes our journey through the tarot with Alice in Underland and the Alchemical Cabala. Thank you very much.